Hi there. In this video, I'm going to talk a wee bit about how I came to understand that I had an alcohol problem, and then after that, how I did something about that problem. First of all, many people have been telling me I had an alcohol issue, particularly my wife. She'd been telling me for some years that I had an alcohol problem, but I denied it. I denied it all the time. Could always point to somebody who drank more than me, or drank more often than me, or was violent in their drinking, etc., etc., etc. All the things I wasn't. That's what I pointed towards. I never actually looked at what I was or what I was doing. Eventually, my wife left, and I was left facing the possibility that all the things I had blamed her for, I might have to take the blame myself. You see, I had blamed her the fact that she was prudish and therefore wouldn't let me drink in peace. And because of that, I kind of overdrank. And really, if she left me, I would drink like a gentleman. Of course, I didn't drink like a gentleman. After she left, I sort of went up to the pub, and I remained drunk for about nearly 2 months. And then I gave up drinking again, and because by this time I was really recognising I had a problem. I would go in and out of AA, but to be honest, I felt I'm not like these people in AA. I don't have as severe a problem. I don't, anything at all. And then I started another binge, but this one was unlike any others. This one, I was really in a bad way. I was suffering badly from withdrawal symptoms. By that, I mean my hands were shaking, I was sweating. I was really, really anxious when I woke up in the morning. The first thing I needed was a drink. I had to get a drink down me, but I couldn't keep it down me because I was actually being sick. And if I wasn't being sick, I had diarrhea. Sorry about that, but that's the way it was. My body was just not accepting alcohol. And yet it was the only thing that would take away this anxiety, this panic that was inside of me. It was the only thing that could settle my nerves down. I was borrowing and stealing money to get alcohol. And then eventually I would get something down me, and then I would go to the pub and I'd start all over again. And that went on for the best part of 2 months. At the end of that time, I ended up, I was hospitalised. I had to go into a psychiatric ward, and they detoxed me in that psychiatric ward. The first thing they did was they just knocked me out, and that way I could detox, because they had to sedate me quite severely. They had to get fluid into me, because although I was drinking lots of alcohol, it dehydrates you, and I really needed lots of fluid. So that wasn't quite a bad way. I'd been abusing alcohol and drugs for many years now, even though I denied it. I didn't deny that I was doing it. I denied that I had a problem doing it, that I could stop any time I wanted. That's the way I felt. Now, while I was in that psychiatric hospital, the psychiatrist, I had an interview with him, and he said, "You have brain damage, you have liver damage, and if you continue to drink and take drugs, you will be dead within 6 months." Now, for most people, you would think, "Whew, that's pretty severe. I really need to stop drinking." And by the way, I did stop drinking, but not for those reasons. The reasons I stopped drinking was because I'd come to realise that I was not the person that I wanted to be. I looked in the mirror and I hated what was looking back. I hated this person who was so selfish that would just trample over anybody to get to a drink. I hated the way I was behaving. I really just hated everything about me. Alcohol, when I drank it, it gave me a wee bit of confidence. It made me feel okay again. It made me feel as if I was human. It made me feel interesting. It made me feel sexy. It made me feel lots and lots of things. Because that's the thing about alcohol. It cheats you. It lies to you. And it certainly did to me, and I was happy to listen to its lies. I really was. But now, those lies they weren't working. They weren't working anymore. The alcohol was not taking away this disgust I had of me. And I really wanted to stop. Now I really wanted to stop drinking. Not in case I would die, because to be honest, at the end of my drinking, I would have been happy to die. I never had real suicidal thoughts, but there were times when I went to bed and just hoped I wouldn't wake up in the morning. Yeah. Anyway, I went out from the hospital and I was really quite scared about what would happen. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous and I went to a lot of meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been before and I didn't like it. I didn't like the people in it. I didn't like anything about it. I didn't like their program. I didn't like what they had to say. So I went there and I was under sufferance. But this time I just thought, I really want to stop drinking. But I really didn't know how to stop drinking. I went to many meetings and people started talking about a program. They talked about the first 3 steps of the program. You know, the first step of the program was admitted they were powerless over alcohol and their lives had become unmanageable. Well, that was easy for me, you know. At long last, I could say, no, I am powerless over alcohol. I didn't say it before because I always felt I could stop at any time I wanted. It was within my power, so I wasn't powerless. But now I realised that, no, when I started drinking, I couldn't stop. That my life had become unmanageable. My life was unmanageable. In fact, my life was pretty unbearable now. You know, my wife had left me. I was really heavily in debt. I was having to sell the house. I still had a job, but only just. But the way I felt about myself, and you know, I'd lost most of my friends. They had just given up on me. So my life was not really much fun. The only thing I seemed to have at that time was Alcoholics Anonymous. The second step came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I objected to this in a number of grounds. You know, first, was there a power greater than me? For a long time I would have said no. But as a few people pointed out, there was at least one power greater than me, and that was alcohol. You know, and that was true. That was definitely true. So I needed something greater to combat that. Yeah. And the second one is when they talked about what that power was. You know, because the third step was, you know, handed my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him to be. Now, God and I had fallen out a long time ago. There was many times in my life when I was really quite devout. I had been training to be a priest at one time. I had been in a Christian commune. It was the Jesus Freak movement, and I was part of that. But I had long since fallen out with God. What I had to find out was that God hadn't fallen out with me, but that was to come later. So I wasn't interested in God because I didn't really want to know what he had to say. I didn't want to hear it because my understanding of God was pretty harsh. You know, he was sitting there with the ledger, you know, the sort of good bits, bad bits, and there weren't many ticks in the good bits. It was all debit, you know. And I really didn't want to know it. The other problem I had with it was by now I just thought that all these Christians were narrow-minded, you know, miserable bigots. That was my understanding of them. And that was a belief that didn't go away for a long time. A long, long time. But anyway, one night I was at home. My head was screaming. I wanted a drink. It was 3 months since I'd had a drink. The longest time I'd had in many years. I'd been to a meeting sort of at noon. I'd been to a meeting in the afternoon, and I'd been at a meeting in the evening. All these AA meetings. But the more people talked about alcohol, even though they were telling you the problems with it, the more I wanted a drink. And here I was, sort of just really, just kind of at home, just waiting for the pubs to shut, waiting for the off sales to shut, so that there was no possibility of me getting a drink. But it was, my head was just screaming for a drink. I was terrified. And I thought, well, maybe I could give this higher power thing a try. Maybe I should try it. And I have to say, I didn't have a great deal of faith that anything would happen. But I prayed for the first time in many years. It wasn't a long prayer. In fact, it was actually a very short prayer. But it was a very fervent prayer. Quite possibly the most fervent prayer I've ever said in my life. And all it was 3 words. God, help me. I might even have added a fourth, which is please. But that's all I said. And I got into bed that night and I slept. Which in itself is a bit of a miracle. But as far as I was concerned, nothing had happened. I mean, I was waiting for this sort of choir of angels. I was waiting for this sort of, the voice from the ceiling saying, this is my beloved son. Was that too much to ask? Just give me a sign. So I get into bed and I slept. I got up the next day and I was at another meeting and I was moaning to one of the older members, and I was telling him that, see this third step stuff, loading of rubbish, and and he said to me, did you have a drink? And I said, no. He said, do you feel like a drink? And I said, no. And it was true. I didn't feel like a drink. And I can honestly say from that day until now, which is now 36 years, I have never had that craving. Never. I'm not saying I've never felt like a drink. Yes, I have. It's usually through curiosity. You go somewhere, I remember going to the Greek islands one time and they said, you must try this. This is the specialty of the island. This is our liqueur. We make it here and you can't find it anywhere else in the world. And I thought, I wonder what it tastes like. I didn't have it. But that's the only reason I felt like a drink. Curiosity. I've never felt like a drink to take away the feelings that I have. I've never had the craving for a drink. I've never felt that I needed a drink. So I've never had a drink in 36 years. Now, clearly, God stepped in. Clearly, God did help me. Clearly, something really happened. And I kind of admitted that for a while. I kind of admitted it, And I felt that maybe God was there and, maybe God could help me. But at that time, he was a God that there was certainly no personal relationship there. God was up there, I'm down here. And to be honest, I was kind of quite happy to keep it that way. But in the next video, I'll tell you a wee bit more about how I came from, this sort of impersonal God, to a relationship with God. Okay? Talk to you in the next one.